So it was a heck of a day at the Alberta Legislature today. Quick summary. This morning at the Standing Committee on Legislative Offices, UCP MLAs voted to do a couple of key things. First of all, essentially voted to fire the Auditor General while he's still in the process of investigating this government, and to essentially cripple his ability to do his audit work on all the new health agencies they created. Second, they voted to block funding for the Chief Electoral Officer for his work on the citizen initiative petitions and recall petitions that are currently on his desk. Let me explain. So, Standing Committee on Legislative Offices, it's one of the standing committees of the legislature where we as members oversee the budgets, business plans, the work of the independent officers of the legislature. So, Auditor General, Ethics Commissioner, Child Youth Advocate, these folks doing very important work on behalf of Alberta. So, we'd gotten some requests from the Auditor General, Chief Electoral Officer that we were considering at a committee meeting this morning. So the Auditor General had written to the committee to say, hey, I'd like to come and meet with you to talk about a 2-year extension when my contract expires in April. I'd like to come and talk to you and explain why. There's a number of reasons why I'd like to do another 2 years. What he got instead was UCP MLAs at the committee voted just simply to refuse to extend his contract. Didn't even want to hear him, didn't want to give him the opportunity to speak or explain himself, basically just cut him off at the knee, said, nope, no extension. Now let's remember, the Auditor General is currently investigating this government in what we call the corrupt care scandal. So that being these overpriced contracts that appear to have gone to private surgical facilities that are owned, operated, supported by friends and supporters of the UCP government. So he's currently in the midst of that investigation. And the UCP have just voted that they want to just cut off his contract. They don't want to give him an extension to finish that work. Now, the Auditor General is also in the process of doing the audits for all of the dissolution of AHS. So the government dismantling Alberta Health Services, carving it up, and creating all of these multiple new health entities. This massive new bureaucracy that's overseeing the healthcare system. So he also came and spoke to us today to ask for additional funding to cover that work. Because as he explained to us, it's going to cost a lot more to do all of these audits for all of these different entities than it did just for Alberta Health Services when it was all consolidated in one. It's going to cost about $1.5 million more this year for that. Plus, he's got to do all the work on all the things they did, all these millions of dollars of properties being transferred, all of these other things happening as part of the dissolution of AHS, taking all that apart and transferring it all to these new agencies. So this is complex stuff, incredibly important stuff to ensure that we have accountability to you as Albertans for every dollar, every bit that's spent, all the stuff that's being done. So he asked for additional funding to do that work, and the UCP said no. They refused to give him that funding right now. They said, wait until the next fiscal year. So essentially there he said, do all of this additional work. We're not going to give you any additional money to do it until after the fiscal year, which ends in March. Insanity. The other piece, the Chief Electoral Officer, he came to us today and he made a request for $13.5 million. He needs that money to fulfill his obligations under the laws that the UCP passed regarding referenda, regarding these citizen initiative petitions and recall petitions. So basically on his desk right now, he came in and said, hey, on my desk right now, I have the Forever Canada petition that was started by Thomas Lukaszuk. So he has to do the verification for that, all of the signatures, hiring dozens of people, equipment, warehouse space to store all the paperwork, all this stuff. He needs dollars to do that. Plus, he's got the new education petition, the one about public and private education. Plus, he had two recall petitions that have been approved and were going forward. So he was asking for $13.5 million to cover the costs of all of that, plus getting ready for this referendum. The Premier has been on the record multiple times in public saying she wants to have a referendum sometime in 2026 based on what came out of the Alberta Next town halls that they did this past summer. So he said he needs about $8 million to get ready and prepare for that, to make sure that he's ready to go. He says normally they need 12 to 18 months to prepare for a referendum. He's not going to have that if the premier goes ahead and does what she said she was going to do. UCP members of the committee took that ask of $13.5 million and cut it by 90%. They gave him $1.5 million. Basically what they said was, we are only going to give you the funding for the Forever Canada petition. That's the only one that's on the table right now. It's just astounding. So basically what they are telling the chief electoral officer is, yeah, you have to do all this work. The law that we passed says you got to do this work, but we aren't going to give you the money to do it. So the chief electoral officer doesn't have a choice. The law says he's got to do it. He's got to contract the people. He's got to get the space. He's got to get the equipment. And the government is saying, no, we will not fund you for that, despite the fact we passed a law that says you got to do it. Now, the chief electoral officer, in fact, after that meeting, after that vote from the members of the UCP on the committee, he sent another letter to us. In that letter, he says, I don't know what I'm going to do. He was very clear. He says, look, this is not a frivolous ask. I have to do these things. I have contracts. I have people already in the works. These processes are already going, and I don't have the money to pay for it. This is the reality we have with the UCP. They sure love talking a big game about democracy. They sure love doing that performance in the legislature in front of the cameras. But when it comes down to the actual crunch, they aren't willing to walk the walk and talk the talk. This is unprecedented disrespect towards the independent officers of the legislature. Let's be clear, those officers, they're there for you, for all of us as members of the legislature and working on behalf of Albertans. This government, UCP, they're just in it for themselves. It's reprehensible. We're going to have a lot more to say about it in the coming days.